Hello and welcome to From the Be All End, the Burnley podcast. This is a debrief for Millwall 1, Burnley 0. I'm Andrew Greaves, alongside me a dejected trio, Justin Connolly, Chris Boden and Paul Woodhouse. Now, I think, Woody, you need to repeat what you said when you came on the recording. We went, are you all right, Woody? Woody's going to come here and cheer us up, and you said...
I think I've already blocked it out. No. It was.
You said, "Make it stop."
Yes, make it stop. Please make it stop. I don't know. It's weird. We talked last week, either the last pod or the pod before, about which season would you prefer? Last year in the Premier League, getting tubbed every week, or this season as is. But currently, it feels like the worst of both. Why did today feel like the worst abject performances in the Premier League, where you knew you were going to get nothing out of it? And literally there was nothing, was there? Nothing. There's nothing to say about that apart from it was horrible. We didn't compete. We weren't first to the ball. We had absolutely no idea, no goal threat. Everybody looked like, they hadn't seen each other before. It was fucking awful. And I know we've been kind of, trying to be as nice as we possibly can to this particular side. But it's that tipping point, isn't it? We're trying to say, well, it's going to click. But there's that converse point where it doesn't click and it starts to, descend into some form of farce. And that's what it felt like a little bit today. Feels like it could be 6 weeks. It feels like one of those bad runs that you could go on, and then by Christmas you suddenly feel like you're out of the reckoning. But that was some bollocks today, genuine bollocks.
and Justin, I mean, you said, I think on the last podcast, it's about staying in touch until January. But Woody's right, isn't it? I mean, we've got West Brom away midweek. We've got Sunderland. Sorry, not Sunderland. Swansea at home on Sunday. I mean, both of these sides are sides which, I think are better than Millwall. They're certainly on paper better than Millwall. But Woody's right. It feels like the worst of both worlds, doesn't it? I mean, at least last season we had a 10-minute spell after half-time where we suddenly kind of convinced ourselves that, actually, we're quite good at this football. But today there was just, Parker said afterwards, you've got to come and fight, and I felt we did that. It felt like there was no fight there, didn't it, today? It felt people were pulling out of challenges. People were not breaking sweat to get to that ball. Is that how it felt to you as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think Woody's completely right. I wanted to try and pull something positive out of it, but there's literally nothing, is there? There's nothing there. I mean, for me, it was astounding that it managed to include almost every element of football that I hate in a single game. It was a really awful performance by Burnley. We've gone from being aimless to pointless in that game, haven't we? There was just nothing. It was like the tactics seemed to be, whatever you do, don't try and score a goal. That seems to me what, if he'd said that, he has said that to them, which obviously he hasn't, but if he had, they'd be doing a pretty good job of it, wouldn't they? They'd be,
It's the old training game. It's the old training game, isn't it? Yeah. You put 5 passes together, you get a goal.
Try.
Yeah,
exactly.
We wouldn't have won that game either today. So,
but then there was terrible refereeing. I mean, 7 minutes to sub out the linesman because he's crocked his ankle. I mean, imagine that happens to a player. Oh, hang on a minute, ref. Can we stop the game for 7 minutes? I've not got my shorts on. The
Millwall player were giving him a bit of... He was going off. He was doing the whole kind of, come on, get off, hurry up. And he was basically saying, this is what you say to us guys. And it's like, I mean, the fourth official looked like he'd he didn't really want to come on, didn't he? He was a bit
let's make us the centre of attention. I hate that. And then there's an opposition that, negative tactics, obviously, like everybody else does against us, and fouling us every time that we get the ball for the first 30 minutes. And then for the hard men of Millwall to be falling over and screeching every time we went anywhere near them, it was just horrible. And then the goal which should have been stopped. I mean, I know we're probably going to blame James Trafford for not saving it, but there was many opportunities to make sure that didn't end up in the back of the net. I mean, it's just the whole thing was one of those games where I wish I'd done something else with those 2 hours, but I'll never get them back.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching on my phone down at my grand's while she was enjoying Downton Abbey, and I have to say, not as a Downton Abbey fan, I was thinking about getting into Downton Abbey. That's how fucking abject it was.
It's not that bad.
Chris, give us some positivity. I mean, Scott Parker's new jacket looked pretty nice, didn't it? His hair's on fleek, I think the kids say. I mean, there's not much else, though, is there?
There's nothing. I saw a message earlier that says, I think we've been quite measured on here of late, and we've seen the performances, and we've been sort of countering that by, look, we're still second in the league. We're still in touching distance. Yeah. And now all of a sudden we're, 6 points adrift, 5-6 points adrift to Sunderland, down to fourth. And I get panned for bringing a certain former manager up from time to time.
Don't say it. Don't say it, Chris.
But
don't say it.
He would, well, to be fair, it's one of his assistants' sayings, to be honest. And he would always say, there's got to be a future in performances. And we've been, to a man, everyone's been sort of saying the performances aren't great, and this has come to bite us on the backside. And we're going to sound really entitled. I don't know how you managed to lose to that Millwall side, who all they were, to me, is a bunch of really honest, hard-working Championship pros. There's no quality there. In the end, a big lump has won it with a big lumping header from a lumped-in cross, and James Trafford. It seemed to take about 3 weeks to get into corner at goal, and
still reaching.
It's still there is zero positivity. We're scraping the barrel if we say, Utonzi had a couple of efforts early doors. We put one wide, and it turned nicely, and that was the sum total of it. But we're all, we've pinned our hopes on Connolly because we sold every other creative outlet we had in that mad week before the window. And Connolly, I can see why Wolves like him, because they love Adama Traore, and to me, he looks exactly the same. He's a sprinter with no end product at the minute, and just down dead alleys. He's not picking people out when he does get to the byline. And I say Joe Bryan, who last time I can remember Barnsley kissing him on the lips against Cardiff that time a few years ago, and he's even been booked in the first half, and he's just never been threatened again after that. And he obviously ended up forced off injured in the end. But we've just, I think Anthony's got ability. I think he's got some quality there, but he's just timid. Take on your fullback. When he does, I don't care if he gets beaten, 9 times out of 10. If the one time he beats him, he puts some quality in. He's jumping out of tackles, which I hate. It's just, and so we've got with an anonymous midfield trio. There's no creativity whatsoever. That's it. I think Egan Riley. I think he's really enjoying a run in the side, but he's about the only person you could pick out who's had a semi-decent afternoon. Roberts stunk the place out, and we've gone from pass, no shot, to pass, give the ball away. Oh, we've had a shot on our own goal, sort of thing. It's the aim of the game is to put that white spherical object in between them white poles at the other end of the park.
Yeah.
I believe we've had an average of about 2.6 shots on target in the last, in 10 or so games or something like that. We've scored fewer than a goal a game. One of them's a penalty as well. And if you don't even attempt to score goals, what's the point? What is the point in the whole process? It's just it beggars belief, really. I'm not pinning this on entirely on Scott Park, because I think he got given a bum hand in the last week of the window, and but it's on him to get a tune out of a bunch of who are still talented footballers and more talented than what we're coming up against. But it's he's got a job on, and if we get beat Thursday night, now all of a sudden, Turf Moor's a bit of a bear pit maybe on Sunday for him, and it gets a bit sort of tetchy and toxic again, doesn't it?
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, that's the kind of thing you want to avoid. If somebody was just looking at the table, I know I'm going to get slated for saying we're still in fourth, and it's not about that. I'm going to qualify that. You'd kind of go, well, it's a bit daft sacking a manager when you're in fourth, but like you said, this does feel like it could be the start of the downturn. Other teams have started to find their feet now. I think we were a little bit kind of like everyone's shit in the Championship apart from Sunderland. Leeds starting to look good. Sheffield United win at Rovers, and I know they've been sketchy, but winning at Rovers still in the top 6 at that point. You kind of fear now, don't you? Watford, great result yesterday. West Brom coming up midweek. You just think that kind of, we've been lucky at the minute that everybody else has been drawing, getting beat, and we've just kind of had some consistency in terms of results, if not performances. Like Chris said, Turf Moor could be a strange old place on Sunday, couldn't it? If we're going into that 9 points behind, possibly even more, given I think Sunderland play before us, don't they? On twice before we play that second game. It's a big test, isn't it, for Scott Parker so early on in his reign?
It is all round. I think sides have worked us out. They can nullify us via a low block. They can nullify us by getting up in our grills, and we don't really have anything but a very pedestrian way of going about us. So we know that QPR, even though they got a good result against Sunderland as well yesterday, I don't see what we are bringing to the Championship at the minute. Millwall are no great shakes, but at least they put a fucking shift in, and if all it takes is to put a shift in against us, and and it's going to throw a huge, great big spanner in the works, then we really are screwed this season. We've got to find a little bit more. If we're not even going to make it to the challenge, which we didn't all across the park today, literally nobody was making a challenge. It was abominable from that perspective. And if we can't break fucking sides down, what the fuck are we bringing to the table? Absolutely nothing. And yeah, like you say, in the space of the next 3 games, in the space of a week, we could very well be 9 points off. Next thing you know, another week or two. I know we've got another international break coming up. Another week or two of rather mundane results, then you're sitting quite handsomely in mid-table, and we know what mid-table looks like in the Championship. You know what I mean? It's as quick to get close to the bottom than it is to get to the top, and it's like we're simply not going to do anything playing this kind of football. We've got nothing to offer, and sides are starting to work us out quite easily. So it is up to Scott Parker, and he's going to have to sort it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, the one thing that Scott Parker does always say is it's a young side. He said it again after when he was interviewed on Radio Lancashire. It's a young side in terms of age, but also in terms of development. It's not really, is it? Let's be honest. I mean, yeah, there are some young players in there, but you've got Cullen, you've got Brownhill, you've got Roberts. These 3 players were all, probably close to, if not in, the PFA Championship Team of the Year 2 years ago. We can't keep using this excuse of it's a young side still developing, etc., can we? Because you've got Anthony who's won promotion out of this division. Mm-hmm. You've got players all over. You've got Josh, no youngster, used to Championship, played his whole career pretty much in the Championship. At what point do we stop going? It's a young side in development, blah blah blah.
It's a bullshit excuse. It's a side that the core of it has basically won promotion 2 years ago. And like you say, you've got Anthony who's won promotion. You've got Brownhill and Cullen. We've got Premier League experience within this bunch. It's simply not an excuse. I don't take there's too many youngsters floating around. You've got Roberts, Zian Fleming. You know what I mean? This core is experienced enough, should know how to play football, knows how to get out of this division, you know. And yeah, I'm not having the youth angle. It would have been a better argument had we kept more or less everybody. But no, I'm not having that at all.
Yeah, Justin, are you buying the kind of we're still in development? You know, we're pleased with the way the lads react, because this is the other thing, isn't it? It's that kind of, again, almost weird metrics that managers go off. You know, Parker said, 25, 30 minutes. I thought we were brilliant in terms of nullifying the stadium and things. And it feels like a bit company ball-esque, where, you know, the number of passes you have and the percentage possession, which all looks great. You know, it flashed up midway through the second half, 60% possession, X amount of passing. We don't measure football on metrics, do we? We measure them on, like Chris said, sticking that big white spherical thing between those three poles.
Well, that's the only stat that matters, isn't it? How many goals we score compared to how many the opposition score. And when you only have one shot on target, and when you've had sort of 70% of the possession, and I don't know how many passes, successful passes in the opposition third, you know, it's like massive numbers. But we're just not creating any chances. We're not having a, you know, Huntonji kind of obviously started the game by having a crack whenever he got the ball, didn't he? And then for some reason we decided we weren't going to give it to him anymore, or not get. I mean, it's like we said on last week's on the preview to this game. It was like there's no point. It doesn't matter who plays in that number 9 position if we don't give him the ball, does it? And he kind of started the game quite promisingly. I thought, well, at least he's going to have a go. At least he's going to get the ball and try something. But then drifted out of the game because we didn't give him the ball. I mean, I don't think the excuse is that it's a young side, because it isn't. I think it's that it's a new side in the sense that, you know, a lot of these players have come into the squad during that crazy transfer window. But we keep going back to this. We keep going back to this metaphor that Simon came up with about, you know, giving an arsonist a box of matches and being surprised when he burns the house down. You know, it's all self-inflicted. You can't rip up the squad and reinvent it, and then 2 months later be using that as an excuse for why things aren't going well on the pitch. You did it. It's your fault. You know, they ripped up the squad. They sold all those players. They bought these new players in. And I just think to use that as an excuse as to why things aren't going well, it just points to me like there's no plan. There's no sort of progression going on. If we'd kept that squad together that we had last season in the Premier League, I don't think there's any doubt that we would be doing a lot better than we are now in this division. But we've replaced a lot of those players who showed signs of development in that team with players who aren't as good, haven't we? I mean, that's the bottom line. These players aren't as good. You know, Anthony's he's to me, he's not on a par with Zaroury. I know Zaroury went off a little bit after coming back from the World Cup and all that sort of thing. But a lot of the players that we've brought in aren't at the moment showing that they're individually as good. The team can take time to gel, but why have we done this in the first place? Why did we rip the squad up? Why did we get rid of all these? Why did we sell all these players? Why did we bring all these players who aren't as good in? It just, using that as an excuse, it leaves a bit of a sour taste for me because they did it. You know, it was a choice that they made. So, you know, we'll see. I mean, I'm not seeing anything in today's performance that gives me any hope of any sort of promise for the future. It wasn't a performance. It was disappointing. And it's not just a one-off. It's a continuation of a pattern that we've seen developing over the last few weeks, where we have a lot of the ball and we do absolutely nothing with it. And that's worrying. And if we can't, we need to stay in touch till Christmas. But if we can't beat teams like Millwall, there's no chance of us doing that.
Yeah. And Chris, let's just pick apart something I think Justin touched on there. I mean, 2 questions. Where does this leave the project? I mean, we don't hear much about the project anymore, do we? And are we now suffering because part of the project, the selling the players part, worked brilliantly, i.e. we got what we got for Wilson Oliver, and, everybody wanted to leave left, and we got a nice little tidy bit of cash for Muric and things like that. But then at the other end, the re-recruiting players, it doesn't feel like that fits the model, does it? I mean, your Antonys, your Flemings, I know they're kind of, loans with view to buys and things like that. Pires perhaps is that, but he's, not getting a sniff. Where does it leave the project? And are we suffering because the project, the wheels fell off the project in the transfer window and we've reverted to, hang on, Scott, who do you know? Who do you fancy? Do you reckon anybody will come and help fill the gap? And that, it's almost 2 philosophies, isn't it? That we can't mix together because they're just 2 completely different footballing philosophies. Is that how it feels to you?
There is no project. Let's have it right. I mean, we knew that some would leave in the summer and they'd have to recoup so much money. The unfortunate thing was, say, quite a lot of those players who'd been signed by Vincent, currently, they've had these long-term injuries. They may well have wanted to sell. Had Aaron Ramsey had not suffered his bad injury, maybe they'd moved him on in the summer. Maybe they'd have moved on Bayer. Maybe they'd have moved on different players and kept certain players that would have given the team a bit more of an identity, perhaps. And now, let's say we're left with the deals. You look at. I mean, Anthony's obviously he worked with Parker at Bournemouth. That looked to me like, yeah, I know him. He's got quality. He's won promotion from this level. If I can get him, can we get him? Probably the same. The same with Sarmiento and Fleming, that they'd impressed at this level. It wasn't one that was plucked from the data banks of a computer program somewhere, was it? Which seems to be how things have been previously working, and that's gone, hasn't it? Now I think it's we're asking the manager's opinion a bit more from what it looks like. I say I've no great knowledge on the subject, but we're now pinning our hopes again. People want to see. We believe Mike Trezeur's on the brink of being selected. Great, because he owes us a hell of a lot. I think he's only made 3 appearances, 3 starts. He owes us big style, and if he wants to move, as we've said before, great. Knuckle down, turn in stellar performances, attract a good move, and go with our wishes. Great. Aaron Ramsey, he's got quality. He's played at this level before on loan. He's a quality footballer. Let's get him up and running. Let's get Nathan Redmond up and running. And we need more options than we used. We laughed at the amount of wide players we were signing under company, and at the minute we've basically got. He's playing Koleosho on the wrong side. From what we've seen, he's far more effective on the left. Anthony, as we say, he's been quite timid of late. Sarmiento again gave a bit of impetus when he came on, and it was almost like he'd been brought on to do Anthony's job for him on that side, and Anthony was almost surplus to requirements. But we've seen him make an impact before against Portsmouth, etc. He needs. I mean, he's obviously had a knock, and he's recently back to where he's selectable again. But he needs a bit of a run in the side just to take. Koleosho needs taking out the firing line. He had a long-term injury, and he's not had a break either. He's just been he's available has been played into the ground. Take him out the side because nothing he tries is happening for him at the moment. Why not switch the two during the game? But if you can get Redmond in and play him as he could play like a sort of Goodmanson role where he's narrowish, he's not hugging the touchline, chalk on his boots job, thickens up midfield a bit, gives you a bit of guile. He's still got a bit of pace about him. And let's get Trezor. Let him. Give him the freedom, and say just go and affect games, and let's see how we go. But yeah, Fleming's obviously a big loss. You Foster as well. It's too early to write everything off, and we need to judge it when he's got all these pieces on the board, basically. But it's alarming how these performances have been allowed to drift.
Yeah. That was semi-positive from Chris there, Woody. I mean, we kind of asked for a bit of positivity, and it's, let's wait till all the pieces are on the board. I mean, there is, mitigating circumstances. We are, we're not conceding very many goals, are we? Let's look for some positives. I know the problem is at the other end of the pitch, and we've, banged on this podcast enough about how we are missing your Redmonds, your Trezors, your Ramseys, your Bensons, etc. How long do you give Scott Parker before, you start asking serious questions? Now, we've said, I think on Friday's podcast, it's madness to kind of, call for the manager's head. But at what point do we as a podcast, you as an individual, start thinking, actually, you know what? Dom Pace, as I know his brethren like to call him, has perhaps dropped a bit of a clanger here, either with the non-existent project or the appointment of Scott Parker. Now, I think that's probably the first time we've asked that question. So, and I'm always kind of happy for your input on these things. I know it's going to be measured, well thought out. But when do we ask the question? And I'm asking it now, aren't I? So
you are. I think it's one of those, isn't it? It's one of the reasons why I'm glad we don't do this podcast straight after a game. Yeah, and this is one of the rare occasions that you do. And the problem is I'm one of these people. It's like everybody goes off immediately after a game. Everybody spouts shit. Everybody loses their minds. Everybody wants to fire him straight out of the gate. And then you've got to take a little bit of a step back, think about it a little bit more, and I don't know. It's one of those situations, isn't it? I mean, I don't trust that we've got a footballing board that would understand necessarily what it's doing or would know what to do in order to replace, because we don't. So they're out of the equation. They haven't got a fucking clue. That's just all, by more luck than management at the end of the day that will get found out by at some point. So you might as well give Scott Parker that bit of time, because he does have previous within this. Obviously, we know his record. Now, he's also stinking the place up. So he's really got to unstink the place up with the way that he's playing, because that's not winning him any friends, is it? By any stretch. And there's only so much you can try and hold the baying fans at bay with regards to what we're serving up week after week. And so I can understand how people suddenly start, and I mean, I know people are calling it an entitlement amongst Burnley fans and what have you, and I don't really want to go down that road, but it's going to turn. It could turn by this next weekend again. There's a lot of talk on Twitter, isn't there? That a lot of people are obviously pissed off. There were a lot of people pissed off 1 or 2 weeks ago. So I don't know. I don't necessarily think I'm the person to answer that. You're just going to wind up pissed off and shouting into the ether. But I think we have the players to come back. I think we have and I know we've said it before. Fulham fans, Bournemouth fans, etc., have told us all about his style of play, and this is what he does. So maybe this is it. Maybe this is as good as it gets.
Justin, quite rational there for Woody. I mean, it kind of, I think people like it when Woody shouts into the ether. I think that's the kind of Woody you love on up the Clarets and Twitter. But
I mean,
what about you?
Bollocks, though. That's the point.
There we go. That's what we want. That's
What
what we want.
he's been shouting into the ether for 40 years, to my knowledge.
Yeah, and it's just not shouting back. That's the problem. Yeah.
Now he has an outlet for it, though, isn't it? Now he has people tuning in to hear the shouting into the ether. But Justin, are you Parker in or Parker out? Fuck it, let's just get it out of the way.
Well, I mean, I think it'd be foolish to rip it up now. I mean, that would be crazy. I think, we've got to see where we are at Christmas. I think that's the key thing. Like I said, if we can get some of these players back from injury, we've got a reasonably thin squad. Like I said on the preview podcast for this game, the side's kind of almost picking itself. There's not really that many options that we can switch things up. I thought he was outthought tactically today, though. I think they did a job on us that he should have seen coming, and we don't seem to have that ability to be able to have a plan B. It's all the same stuff. 90 minutes of the same stuff, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Even when the subs come on, it's kind of the same patterns emerge.
It's just quicker, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the subs come on and run around a bit faster, don't they? That's about the only kind of change we get. Sarmiento and Hannibal to a lesser degree sort of affected things a little bit, but we still didn't create anything, did we, when they came up? No. Now, this thing about us being entitled, I think, is a ludicrous expression. It's not about being entitled. It's about expectations and standards having been set. We were a Premier League club for a number of years, an established Premier League club. And that's changed as a result of the change in ownership, hasn't it? That's what's changed. That's why there's a difference between what was going on then and what's going on now. Maybe it's not as black and white as that, but ultimately, since the change of ownership, we've lost our Premier League status. It's very, very easy for a club like ours to become stuck in that mid-table championship, nonsense. And that's the fear, isn't it? That's going to happen. That's the fear is that we're going to end up being one of those sort of clubs that sits in that middle of the championship without really, pushing on, without really striking. And that's what worries me about this. And I think the performances that we've seen over the last few weeks, I think, when I talked about the performance dial that we've got it set at 4. I think we've sort of turned it down to 3 for today for reasons that I don't quite understand. A bit more. I do think we've still got the quality required to get out of this division. I still think we've got the quality that's needed, especially when the players come back. But it's all about having that positive mindset and that confidence and that go. We should be confident enough going to Millwall that we are considerably better than they are, and yet we've come away from that game losing it. Now something's wrong there, isn't it? I don't know what it is. I think it's the positive mindset of the players. I think they're not. I think they're too negative. I think they're just getting those positions and they're knocking the ball back. It's always a cross. It's always sideways rather than going forward. I still think, if we turn that dial up to a 5 or a 6, we've got the quality to hurt teams like that. We should be taking teams like Millwall apart. And it's not entitlement. It's entitlement to me as a sense that we feel like we're owed it in some way without having to work for it. That's not what any Burnley fan feels. What Burnley fans feel is we should be doing better than we are. Given the money we've spent, given the quality we've got on the pitch, we should be doing better than we are. And that's not entitlement. That's just expectations of standards that have been set over a number of years. And we're not living up to those standards at the moment. So, I mean, what was the question? Parker in, Parker out?
It's a simple yes or no, yeah.
Well, he's on borrowed time, isn't he?
Interesting. Chris, are you Parker till Christmas or Parker till the end of the season? or do you pull the trigger earlier?
He's got a 3-year contract. Are we seriously in a position where we're going to put a manager like sort of a quarter of a way into his first season of 3? It's insanity, isn't it? It's like I say, he's seen the course twice before and got over the line. Fulham fans will moan that, yeah, we shouldn't have gone up via the playoffs. I don't give a monkeys how you get up. It's getting up. That's the whole the whole idea of the promotion system is you either finish in those little the points above the jagged line, or you finish in the next 4 spots to the next jagged line, and you make you get there by hook or by crook. I say I don't like bringing that lot down the road into the equation, but when Dalglish went in there in '91, I think they thought they'd absolutely rocket to automatic promotion, and they sneaked in the playoffs. And they won the playoffs. And the rest is history. It's about getting over the line. I don't, it's and so people will put up with performances if the results are all right. Now we've been exactly that for a few weeks, but if the results aren't right, and you're getting beat by, and I say we should not be losing today to a team that has significantly inferior quality than we have, that had more heart and more desire and more will to win. And we're not used to seeing that either, at Burnley Football Club, as Justin alluded to, the standards that have been set over a decade or so. No, he's no fool. He's no fool. And I don't believe managers might have a way, a philosophy, a style of play, but each club he's been at, he's had a different set of players. You can't play the same way with 3 different sets of, even Allardyce had his ways, but were his Bolton team the same as his Blackburn team? With the same as his Newcastle team that he got 2 minutes at, etc. It's you work with to quote Stan, you work with what you've got. You try and get the best out of what is available to you, and that's what I'm sort of pinning my hopes on with Scott Parker.
That's the worry, isn't it? If today is the best he can get out of what he's got, then there's that standard that we've set is not going to be met, is it?
No, but when I say we're in the realm of excuses now. But to have no Fleming, which is an absolute bullshit rule as well, by the way, he's a Burnley player. We've not signed him on loan, and he's going back to Millwall. He's signing for Burnley at the end of this season. Whatever happens, he's a Burnley footballer to all intents and purposes, and he can't play against bloody Millwall, but he can play on Thursday night. I say there's no Foster. And again, this comes down to recruitment. Why we didn't go out and sign an actual centre forward in the summer when you've let Vegos was never going to stick around for more than 2 minutes. Amdouni was always going to go to Europe, and Obafemi was allowed to leave the building. I mean, don't tell me he wouldn't have been. He's not the answer, but he's back up, isn't he? Scott Twine was allowed to go. Scott Twine would have been, and maybe these players have turned around in the summer and said, "Nah, I'm not being back up anymore. I want to play a route," which is fine. That's their prerogative. But I think it's one of those. We can't be slating Scott Parker, given he's got a hell of a lot of research. Everyone's moaning at the minute, but City are moaning about having double figures out. Arsenal are moaning about having 7 or 8 out. We've got 10, 12 players out. If the big hitters are allowed to moan, I think we're allowed to moan.
I think if Fleming had been playing today, it wouldn't have made the slightest bit of difference. It just would have been him not touching the ball instead of him Tonji, wouldn't it?
It's quite likely. But it's one rule that bloody annoys me. He can play whenever he's available, but that it can affect. It can affect games. It can affect seasons, can't it? The outcome of seasons where you're playing against every other team, but not playing against Millwall. It's nonsense.
Definitely. Well, let's leave it there. We tried to be positive, didn't we? I mean, we were kind of, I think we were measured, but there we go. Parker in for now, I think, is the verdict. Our next podcast will be out on Friday. I don't know if we'll do that as a kind of debrief stroke kind of normal pod. Probably a bit of both. We'll see how we get on against West Brom Thursday night. But yeah, until then, enjoy your week despite the result. Hopefully none of you work with Millwall fans who'll be gloating tomorrow morning. But yeah, enjoy your week. And until Thursday, Friday, up the Clarets.